7 great people who supported the Nazis. 1. Walt Disney. Disney made anti-Nazi films during the war. He never made any public statements in support of Hitler, but before 1939, Disney's stance was different. He often visited meetings of the German-American Bund, that was the U.S. chapter of the Nazi Party. In 1938, Disney personally welcomed Nazi filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl. She was promoting her propaganda film, Olympia. Disney gave Riefenstahl a grand tour of his studio. She later noted that it was gratifying to learn how thoroughly proper Americans distanced themselves from the smear campaigns of the Jews. 2. King Edward VIII. Edward VIII was Elizabeth II's uncle. He abdicated in 1936 to marry a commoner, Wallis Simpson. His brother, George VI, was hastily crowned instead. Edward was reportedly displeased. He and Wallis visited Nazi Germany. In 1937, they met with Adolf Hitler and other high-ranking officials. The Germans had a plan to overthrow King George. They promised to reinstate Edward if he helped them. The plan never materialized. After the war, Edward and Wallis moved to France. They never returned to England. 3. Henry Ford. Ford was never shy about his anti-Semitic views. Hitler himself called Ford his inspiration in Mein Kampf. In 1938, Germany awarded Ford the Grand Cross of the German Eagle. It was the highest honor available to foreigners. Ford received the award for his devotion to the cause of peace. Like the Fuhrer, Ford Motors continued to operate in Germany during the war. 4. Pope Pius XII. The Vatican maintained neutrality during the war. Pope Pius XII never condemned the Holocaust. He was informed of the atrocities in 1942, but Pius refused to believe the reports. Thus he could maintain good relationships with Berlin. The Vatican Bank hid billions in stolen wartime loot. After the war, this stance came in handy. The Vatican helped Nazis escape to Argentina. The Argentine government sheltered them at Pius's request. 5. Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss joined the Nazi Party in 1931. The brand's sales increased 100-fold during the 1930s. The company produced the famous all-black SS uniforms. Later it also produced uniforms for the Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS. Hugo Boss factories used forced labor. After the war, Hugo Boss was labeled a supporter of Nazism. This meant paying a heavy fine, so he appealed the decision. The ruling was changed to follow a less severe offense. Boss died in 1948 of a tooth abscess. He never repented. 6. Coco Chanel. In 1940, France was occupied by the Nazis. Coco Chanel chose not to leave Paris. She hobnobbed with high-ranking German authorities. When her nephew was arrested, Coco asked to let him go. They did, but made her spy for them instead. Using her connections, Coco met with British diplomats. She had to gather intelligence for the Abwehr. After the war, Coco fled to Switzerland. She returned to France, was put on trial, and acquitted. 7. Ingvar Kamprad. The IKEA founder was a Nazi recruiter. He actively recruited people to the Swedish Nazi Party. Sweden remained neutral throughout the war, but Swedish police kept an eye on local Nazis. They set up a file on Kamprad in 1943 when he was 17. That same year he founded IKEA. Kamprad downplayed, but never denied his involvement. He called it youthful stupidity and the greatest mistake of his life. However, he remained close to Swedish Nazis after the war.